can think of everything else as stuff that I can play with, as stuff that I can adjust. So I happily delayed an SCV, I delayed the timing of my supply depot, all that sort of good jazz. And just after this test concludes, as I just sort of think out loud a little bit more, I'll be happy to take some more questions. So now I have 100, so I'm building a supply depot on time. Fantastic. Sending guys in here to gas. And the barracks is coming up as well. But for, any of you new players who are not, diamond, gold level caliber, there is absolutely everything right about just doing this over and over again. In fact, I'd recommend that if you see a really good player play and you go, man, I love that build, I want to try to do that, you should just pop into the map editor, or this game, which again you can download at teamliquid.net. QXC is the author of this. And you can get great practice in. You can do a really great job doing serious damage with this style. So right now, I am noting that I got my Marauder started, and I want this Marauder stuff to happen as fast as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop at 15 food, and I'm not going to make any more SCVs. I'm going to continue making Marauders. I'm going to pull as many guys off gas as I can. So again, this Marauder would be rallied to him. But I'm going to be making an orbital command. I'm going to stop SCVs at 15, and I'm going to make an orbital command. Because, watch my money, I don't quite have enough money to get non-stop Marauders and a very early orbital command. But maybe if I cut these SCVs and get the supply depot up really early on, I can sort that one out. That seems pretty good. So, I'm going to be muling in just a minute. Here comes the mule. I'm spamming, trying to get it lined up. And wow, if this lines up nicely, this is actually going to be amazing for me. Yeah, look at my third Marauder. It's going to pop out. So I'm getting my orbital command at 16. I'm getting a little bit supply blocked here, but it's not horrendous by any sense. So, wow, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I now have a new build that I'm going to be doing, where I early pressure Protoss with 1 Rax Marauder, and I can even get an early orbital command. And look at my money just skyrocket thanks to that mule. I can easily do something very QXC-like and make a whole bunch of barracks and try to just barrel my opponent to death. Fantastic. So I will take some questions. Be delighted to snag some of those. And I do believe I did get the concussive shell in there as well. Yep. Always want to get that concussive shell as the Marauder. So yes. Yes. So Helson631 says, Dear Day 9, why not just perfect a teching build order without building units, then in stress testing, delay the order a little bit for units. This way, you have the optimal time to get Unit X out. I think that's a great idea. That's another excellent technique, is to just try to build stuff physically as fast as you possibly can. I think it's okay to make some reasonable assumptions, like, as Protoss, why not build a Stalker, right? Just build a Stalker, because you're going to need to deal with some sort of early pressure regardless. It's not something that you can magically avoid. What was I going to say? Yeah, so I mean, that sort of stuff is fine. And I mean, in general, I try to make probes constantly. I think that's normal. I try to make units constantly, and then cut units if I don't really need them. That's another alternative. But I mean, for instance, if you are completely clueless, that is exactly what Helson says sounds totally kick-ass. So Vandalem says, Dear Day 9, I'm pretty solid with the first 4 or 5 minutes, but from there, it seems as I go with the flow, it really takes away from my build order. How do I keep myself from getting distracted? That is a great question. So, you heard me say that there are a few things that I always do, as I flatten my hair just a little bit. There's a few things I always do. I always make pylons on time. And by always do that, I mean it's always something I'm trying to be aware of. I'm always trying to make probes. I'm always trying to make units. And those tend to be independent of my build. Just constantly do those, constantly do those, constantly do those. And then, in a sense, with the build order that I did for Protoss, I think of it in the context of constantly doing all those other things. So, for instance, I don't really know the exact times that I'm building pylons. Literally, in that build, I don't know. Not important to me. Not a valuable number to me. What's important to me is that constantly make probes, constantly make pylons. And again, that's standard. But then what's unique to this build? Delaying that second gas to get a zealot out. That's a little bit unique. Getting the assimilator before the zealot. Not making any sentries because I don't have the gas for it. That's pretty interesting. Getting a stalker right at the start and chrono boosting it to deal with reapers. That's pretty interesting. And then from then on out, it's pretty much get the gateways of the chrono boost at completely reasonable times, and the Dark Templar will be popping out very, 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 very quickly. Or likewise, with the Reaper build, what made it interesting? Well, I mean, obviously the 10 racks and the 10 refinery are just normal, but to me what's interesting is that stop making SCVs. Your instinct is to always make SCVs and always get that economy in fantastic shape. But here, oh, I cut making units here. Or, I mean, even with this Marauder build, like, the fact that I was like, oh, I can get this supply depot up if I simply stop making SCVs at 15, and then I can continue my Marauder production as normal. I think that is, yeah, totally kick-ass. So, an easy way to keep yourself from getting distracted is that it's a little bit hard if you're like, okay, make this at this time, and this at this time, and this at this time, and this at this time. Because once you get up, even when you get up to like 20, 25 food, you have a lot of stuff that you have to start doing. So I would train yourself on some of those fundamental 3 things. Constantly making workers, constantly making units, and constantly looking at your food. And honestly, if you want to work at on those skills, just play a game. And only look at the top right corner and say, is money being spent, yes or no? And then work on that. And don't worry too much if your build order feels crappy, or if it feels, if you have really high money because you apparently built 3 barracks when you could have built 9, that's fine as long as those 3 barracks are making stuff, and as long as your command centers are always making workers. In that circumstance, you are ingraining those 3 fundamental skills: supply, making units, and SCVs. And then when you have those, it becomes, like, once you have those ingrained and those are automatic, it feels like you're not being distracted from anything, because there's only one thing to think about. Like for me with this Dark Templar build, I've actually done this one several times before, and I have all this ingrainment in like when to make workers, when to do all this other stuff, that I was, in my head, all I'm thinking is, man, I really need to start getting Zealot leg speed right as my Dark Templar shrine's building. So at this point in time, there's like 2 things I'm waiting for. One is getting that Zealot started and that refinery that's a little late started, and the second one is getting that that Zealot leg speed started. The rest of it is Dark Templar as fast as you can, which for the most part is fairly intuitive once you've cleaned out the sentry issue and that sort of thing. For any of you curious about how to play this map, download it from teamliquid.net. QXC has it. Open it up in the map editor, and in the top right corner of the map editor, actually on the little tab bar, it will say, test this map. I can actually show it to you really fast right here. So here is the terrain editor. It's this little button here where my mouse cursor is just circling around right up there. You'll notice that it says test document, control F9, and that's exactly what I did. Just bam, hit it. And got the chance to play this. In single player, I'm going to be doing it a ton during the downtime, testing some build orders. But yeah, I think that's pretty fantastic. Here's a great question. Oh god, this is such a relevant question. And if you don't think that this is a relevant question, or if you've turned off this video, then very, very bad you. Okay, so this is this is one of the best questions I've ever heard by Spear of Solomon. It says, Day9, do you think that when you're Protoss, you have to get an early Stalker to prevent Reaper harass? Let me first explain why I love this question so much. A lot of people would read that and go, stay on topic, man, this is about testing build orders. But notice what Spear of Solomon did. Spear of Solomon questioned a fundamental assumption in Protoss vs. Terran that 99% of Protoss players have. Like a fundamental assumption. Alright, so I got my cybernetics core, and then of course I built the Stalker, because I had to hold off Reaper harass, and the other person goes, and you see that actually almost 100% of the time. I'm actually struggling to think of a game where I didn't see a Protoss get the Stalker pretty much right when his cybernetics core finished. And if you ask yourself those sorts of questions, if you question assumptions, you can start to do some really creative stuff. Like, let's say, for instance, your problem, let's say with this Dark Templar build, let's say your issue is not at all Reaper harassment. Let's say it's a delayed Hellion push. Seems reasonable enough. And you decide that you literally just need to buy yourself 10 seconds, so a sentry really would be good. Well, you scout him, and if he is going for Reaper, then you get the Stalker, but if he's not, skip the Stalker. Oh my god, by saying, do I really need the Stalker? Now I have something that I can pop out of my build order and get another 125 minerals and another 50 gas to play with. And people treat this economy management like it's this small, kind of tiny part of the game, that it has to do with hand speed. But I mean, really, it's just resource management in